All right, and we are recording. So we can go ahead and get started. Just so you all know, if you don't want to be on the video, I have it so that if your camera's turned off, you won't be on the main screen. So just in case anyone needs that. But hello, thank you all for joining us. My name is Tor Johnson. I work in the Office of Sustainability at the Morris campus doing event planning and outreach mainly. And I'm super glad that y'all are here to join us today. So our first kind of question that we have is just like quick intros. So if you want to share your name, if you're comfortable sharing your pronouns, go ahead. Morris grad year and your majors and minors, and then your current job title. So whoever wants to go first.
I can start. My name is Emily Moore. I go by she, her. I graduated Morris in 2017. I had a dual major in physics and environmental science, and my current job title is an environmental engineer.
My name is Mike Sorenson. I go by he, him, his, and I graduated in 2013 with an environmental science degree with minors in biology and geology. I think I was maybe in the first graduating class of environmental science. Is that right, Troy? Does anyone know that? Right around that time, yeah.
Cool. And my name, job title.
Oh, sorry. My job title, Water Resources Lead at Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
Cool. Awesome. And my name is Rachel Ulm. I go by she, her. I graduated in 2009, and I graduated with a degree in biology. But then right before Mike, and before they had gotten the official environmental studies program, my other degree was environmental studies area of concentration. Nice and ambiguous. Cool. My current job title is scientist and principal with Houston Engineering.
Awesome. Thank you all. So then our first actual question is, did you always know what you wanted to do? And then how did you choose your major and your career?
Should we go in reverse order?
Whatever works for you guys. You can pick if you want to go first or whatever.
Who wants to start us off?
Go ahead, Rachel.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, just to make sure I get it right.
Yeah, so it was, did you always know what you wanted to do? And then how did you choose your major and your career?
Perfect. First answer is a very easy no. Very easy no when I started at Morris. I was really drawn to Morris because it was liberal arts. I was, when I went into Morris, my declared majors were actually music and psychology. So for the first quarter of my degree at Morris, I was a music and psychology major. In high school, I was really pulled to a biology course, and I was just kind of spun back into that vortex. I was just magnetized to that again when I was doing a liberal arts course for biology my first year, and I just loved it. So kind of reignited that passion for mine. So stuck with that all the way through, and knew environmental studies was kind of my passion area in the biological sciences as well. When I got done with Morris, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. Did you ask how I ended up where I am here? I want to be mindful of time because it's kind of a longer story, but I didn't take a super linear path either. When I graduated, it was 2009, so it was right in the peak of the recession. I was wise enough during my undergrad to get to know people like Troy Goodenow, who connected me to an opportunity for an environmentally focused AmeriCorps program for Green Corps. So I did that for a year, which was with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Then I did another year of AmeriCorps after that with an environmental nonprofit. And then 2 years working as a contractor to an environmental organization, and working with Ecolab as the contracting location before I decided to go back to grad school for my master's in water resources science. That's kind of what ultimately pulled me back, is just my ongoing passion for water resources and wanting to get involved in that. So as part of that, I got a research assistantship where I got to work with Houston Engineering, who I now work full time with and have been working there since. That's my story.
Rachel, as I mentioned earlier, Rachel, I was doing some LinkedIn creeping, and I learned
Yes.
that you and me were in the same grad program at the same exact time, but I was on the Duluth campus and you were on the Twin Cities campus.
Awesome.
So,
Very awesome. I'm a Duluth native, so I was about this close to going to water resources at the Duluth campus because it's a beautiful place.
you know, to do lake
awesome, right?
ecology, I could pick Duluth or Twin Cities. It's hard to pass up Duluth for that.
Oh, truly.
So I suppose I can go. I'm from Detroit Lakes, so I also grew up around the lakes. I think there's something like 200 lakes within 20 miles of Detroit Lakes. And when I was in high school, the documentary An Inconvenient Truth came out. And I watched that when I was young and impressionable, and it really did make an impression on me. And I got really fired up by that, and I was like, I'm going to save the world. So I went to Morris, and right off the bat, I wanted to do biofuel chemistry kind of work. And Jennifer Goodnow was my advisor when I started in Morris. And the summer after my freshman year, I got an internship with Pelican River Watershed District in my hometown. And I was the water resources intern. So I was doing lake water quality sampling. I was doing plant surveys on lakes. I was doing some stormwater sampling. And having spent so much of my childhood in and around the lakes, and I didn't really know that was even a path that I could choose, and that it was such a thing as lake scientists, because I didn't know anyone growing up who did that kind of work. And it just really checked a lot of boxes for me. So that summer and the internship I had really kind of inspired me to want to pursue the water resources route. And the next summer, I got an internship working with Troy at the Center for Small Towns with a nonprofit in Montevideo called Cure. Maybe you're familiar, and if not, you should check them out. And that was a really good experience for me because it was all about communication and bringing people together for community events and talking to people about how land use affects water quality. And that whole communication, public education piece was new to me at that time. And I found out I really liked doing that. So I decided I like water resources. I like talking to people, communicating, but I do like the science too. So I've kind of gone in that direction, and I went and got a master's degree in the water resources science program through the U of M. And I've mainly been doing local government work. And by that, I mean working for cities or watershed districts in a relatively small geographic area. So right now I work just for the city of Minneapolis. So I'm responsible for the lakes and streams in Minneapolis and nothing outside of that. And I really like working in local government because I have a relatively confined space that I'm responsible for, and I get to know the lakes and streams in that small space really well. And I get to know the people who live and recreate around those water resources. And I feel really connected to the community. And I like that a lot. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Yeah.
My story is a little shorter. I have a little shorter career path so far, but I kind of went back and forth when I was younger and what I wanted to do. And later in high school, I decided I wanted to do engineering, specifically environmental engineering, because I always really, really liked math. It came really easy to me. And I always really enjoyed the environment. I tell this story because it makes me laugh, but my grandpa always kind of instilled it in me. When we were younger, we'd go on these like road trips from Minnesota to Florida, and he would always bring a bag with to collect all the recycling, because you wouldn't have recycling at gas stations or truck stops. So it's kind of instilled in me at a young age. So I knew I wanted to do environmental engineering, but I also really wanted to go to Morris. Both my parents went and graduated at Morris and met there. So I'm a legacy. So I kind of made my own path in knowing I had to get my master's eventually. So I kind of combined what I needed to get all the prereqs done for that. So physics and environmental science. And then went on and got my master's in environmental engineering at the University of Colorado Boulder. And then I got to be an environmental engineer now. So I really enjoy it. And I think there's more questions about it, so I'm not going to go too much more into it yet.
Yes, thank you all. And there's lots more time for you to dive into things. So our next question is, did you participate in any research, internships, or jobs to help you prepare for your career? And so I think a few of you kind of touched on this. If you want to go into more detail or whatever you want to share about that.
Yeah, I can start off. I did a bunch of different things while I was at Morris. My first summer, so after my freshman year, I did an internship at the West Central Research and Outreach Center right there in Morris. I was a renewable energy intern. That was a really good experience. I got to stay in Morris in the summer, which, if anyone has done that, it's very different than during the school year. It also it kind of gave me an idea of what was in that world of renewable energy and sustainability and the environment, what kind of jobs there were, what people were researching. I got to climb the wind turbine and go to the top of it, so that was really fun. I also was a data intern at the Office of Sustainability, so I got to see what Morris itself was doing in that area. And then after my junior year, I was a research assistant for the REU program, which I don't know if you guys know. But I did that out at Portland State University. So I spent a summer in Portland studying wind energy and turbulence there. So that was a really cool experience. I also did some research at Morris as well, but those are kind of the big things I did environmentally that gave me a lot of professional skills and knowing how to communicate with superiors and colleagues and how to formulate research and just really gain a lot of those skills that I use every day in my job.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, so I would say my first kind of internship was also with the Center for Small Towns. There's a dog. So cameo number one, and there's my child, cameo number two. My first internship was with the Center for Small Towns, where we were working on an environmental affordable housing neighborhood. And I really liked that, just to kind of, I think was really good from a networking perspective to kind of get to know a little bit as far as what type of engineering architectural engineering can intersect with project management and with sustainable systems. So I really liked working as part of that project. During the summers, I also did an internship when I was still in Morris with an environmental education center, or as a naturalist. So I'm kind of wanted to try that on for size and see if being a naturalist was something that really fit, because I knew I really wanted to work at the intersection of people and science. So it was a really good opportunity for me to kind of dip my toes into another type of career focused in biology, environmental studies, and working with humans. And then the last research and an internship position that I had was when I was pursuing my master's in water research. I got a research assistantship with the Board of Water and Soil Resources, or BOWSR, in order to kind of frame out this new evolutionary approach to watershed planning, which I can go into more when I'm talking about my current position, because it is just in lockstep with my current position. So all three of them really different, all three of them really critically important in order to just kind of dip my toes into the water as far as what a career could look like in environmental sciences.
Yeah, and I talked earlier, I worked for Pelican River Watershed District the summer after my freshman year and got to do all kinds of different in the field water quality sampling. And then I worked for Cure with Troy and did community event planning and public outreach types of work. And then the summer after my junior year, I worked for the Minnesota DNR in my hometown, Detroit Lakes, as what they call the Shallow Lakes intern. So there are all kinds of shallow, small lakes throughout Minnesota that oftentimes are completely surrounded by private land and don't have public boat launches on them. So the DNR knows next to nothing about what kind of plants live in those lakes, what type of waterfowl use those lakes. And this program is the DNR's attempt to try to do some surveying of those lakes and try to understand them a little bit better. So it was talking to owners and trying to get access to the lakes and doing surveys to see what we could learn about the lakes. So that was a really good job. And then my junior and senior year during the school year, I did research with Tracy Anderson, who some of you probably know. So she does benthic macroinvertebrate lake insect research, basically. So I was out with Tracy at some of the lakes near Morris, collecting insects and learning how to identify them. And that unlocked this passion for learning about invertebrates in me that I carried into graduate school. And I studied the spiny water flea as a graduate student, which is an invasive species of zooplankton in lakes. And then I think Rachel said she had a research assistantship in grad school. I was kind of on the other side. So generally, if you go to grad school in the sciences, you can be a research assistant or you can be a teaching assistant. And those are two different ways that you can use to kind of pay your way through grad school. So I was teaching and I taught General Biology 1 labs and discussions, which were kind of like mini lectures at UMD for 5 semesters while I was a graduate student. And I really enjoyed that and got a lot out of teaching. So, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. So our next question is, what did you do right after graduation? Did you attend grad school or jump straight into a career?
I can jump in. I think I hit on most of that. I jumped again on this question a little bit and already gave you guys an overview about what I did after graduation. But yeah, I really did have a curvy route to my career where it was a 2 years of AmeriCorps program, which was really great for networking. It was a great opportunity to meet a lot of people that work in local governments as well as state agencies. Which for me was really important and is a network that I still use today, many years later, as are some of the connections that I built in that first year of AmeriCorps. The second year as well, just to be able to try a different organization type. So this is a nonprofit. It was a good opportunity just to kind of work within the nonprofit world and again, network within that nonprofit world as well. Then working the 2 years as a private contractor with Pace Analytical at Ecolab. Good opportunity to work kind of within a smaller company, but also as part of a large, more corporate ecosystem, and kind of see how that world functioned before ultimately going back to Water Resources Sciences, Masters of Science degree. So yeah, I did not go immediately back into grad school. Had a 4-year gap where I got to really try out a few different areas.
Go, Emily.
Sure. Yeah. So right out of Morris, I went to grad school. I went to, like I said, the University of Colorado Boulder and got my master's in environmental engineering. I did a focus in engineering for developing communities, which was really interesting because part of that you had to do an international internship. So in between the 2 years of grad school, I spent 6 weeks in Swaziland and did some work there with a local nonprofit that helps educate people on proper sanitation and how to keep themselves healthy, get clean water, and then just a lot of helping in that way. So that was a really awesome experience to see how other people in the world live and things that they have to deal with on a day-to-day that we take for granted. It also focusing in the engineering for developing communities was really interesting because I met a lot of different people. A lot of people in my program were from other countries or different states. And so being in Minnesota my whole life until that point, other than a little bit in Portland, it was really interesting to just meet a lot of people and hear their perspectives on the world. It really broadened the way that I saw engineering and sustainability. We see it in one way, but in different parts of the world, they really focus on smaller steps to make bigger impacts. So that was what I did right after school. And then after I graduated from Boulder, I came back to Minnesota because I really missed the trees. You don't think that you think Colorado has a lot of trees, but it's just really in the mountains, not really where the people live. So I came back to Minnesota and I applied for a variety of different environmental engineering jobs, some other science type jobs. And I got my first job was with an international environmental consulting firm, GHD. And so I started there in 2019, 3 months before COVID, and have been there ever since. So it's been a kind of crazy ride starting and having a couple months of normalcy and then going through the working from home and changing everything.
Like I mentioned earlier, I had a couple of really great internships as an undergrad that convinced me that I wanted to go into water resources. And I knew I wanted to go to grad school because I really enjoyed school and wanted more specific coursework, I suppose, than I was able to find in Morris in the field that I wanted to study. But I didn't have any friends or family members that had gone to grad school in the sciences before, so I didn't really know what that path looked like. So I remember talking with Tracy Anderson and Keith Bruger, who was my advisor at that time, several times about how to even go to grad school. What does that even look like? And the whole idea that you find a professor who has an opening in their lab and is willing to take you on and has funding to take you on versus just applying to programs. That was all new to me. So they really helped me figure that out. And they told me that I should take the GRE, and I did that. I think the fall of my senior year in Morris, and was able to get things lined up so that literally I graduated from Morris in like mid-May, and on June 1st, I started working in my research lab in Duluth. So I had like 2 weeks off in between, which I would say I know a lot of people who took time off between undergrad and grad school, and I know a lot of people who went straight through, and I really don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. Grad school is a lot of work, and I would say if you're not convinced you know what field you want to go into, it's a really good idea to take that time off and try to figure out what you want to do. But I had a good experience in grad school, and I've been in Minnesota ever since, and it's a good place to be a lake scientist. So
So thank you, everyone. So our next question is, what are you working on currently? So describe your current position, what your day-to-day responsibilities are, anything you like or dislike about your job, and then also if you want to talk a little bit about how you found that job or how you ended up in that position. Yeah. And I can repeat any of that too. It's kind of multiple parts. So if you need to like ask me to repeat the question, I will. So
I can start off. So like I said, I work for an international environmental consulting firm. They're actually based out of Sydney, Australia. So we have offices all over. I work for the St. Paul office, and they call them service lines at my company, but my service line is environmental compliance. So my job is pretty much helping our clients understand and follow the environmental regulations in place for their specific facilities. So I do a lot of permit reading, report writing for stormwater, oil storage, chemical storage, everything like that, air permits, a long list of those things is part of my job. But another part is I actually was really lucky and got pulled on to a huge project. Many of you might know it. It's the Twin Cities Army Ammunition Plant off 35W. It's actually a Superfund site. And so my company is in charge of the operation and maintenance out there and remediating the groundwater. So I'm the project coordinator on that. I get to deal with the day-to-day of making sure that the systems are operating and that we're achieving proper treatment. And so part of that, I do a lot of on-site work with sampling, groundwater, monitoring wells, treatment systems, air sampling, soil sampling, as well as fixing a variety of issues that come up. This week, we're having some issues with our ozone generator that helps treat the water. So that's been something I've been dealing with, a lot of calls and figuring out how to fix that. It's also really interesting because with this project, I get to kind of move up the ladder as I go. Eventually, I'll move to the project manager role. And so with that, we work with the agencies on making a plan to how we're going to achieve this remediation, how we're going to make this site clean again and sustainable for future generations. They're actually looking to develop this site in the next years. I mean, they've been saying that for a while, but now I think they're actually going to do it. So kind of getting the site ready for having people living on there and dealing with all the different changes that go into that. We also have a lot of like monthly reports, annual reports that we have to do and that. So that site's really fun for me as a young engineer. I've got to do a variety of a bunch of different things. Like I said, I've got to work with regulators, clients, federal, private. And then in my other compliance work, I work with a variety of different types of companies, railroad companies, food companies. It's just kind of a lot of different variety in my job, which I really like. It's not the same thing every day. It's not sitting at a desk every day. There are days that I sit at a desk, and there's also days that I get to go out in the field and actually see what's happening and make impactful changes. So that's kind of, I think, is this where we talk about if what we like or don't like? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess what I like about it is the variety and the challenges. I like being busy and I like being challenged, and my job definitely does that every day. It's, like I said, something new. The one dislike with my job, and that I'm sure a lot of people deal with in consulting, is not every client's goal is to make the environment better and do the best that they can. Sometimes their goal is just do what they have to do. And as a consultant and they're your client, you have to kind of go along with it. And so sometimes it's not as fun to say like, yes, you should be doing more, or like, that would be great, but you can't force them to do it if it's not required and they don't want to spend the money on it. So that's kind of the downside of my job, is you see the really great clients that go the extra mile, and then you see the clients that are like, okay, what do I have to do to not get fined? So it's a kind of a double-edged sword on that.
Well, Emily, I'm curious, what are typical clients for you? Do they tend to be the government, or are they developers, or all kinds of different things?
All kinds of different things. Like I have some federal clients, like the Army, for the Twin Cities Army Ammunition Plant. Obviously, we work with the Army there, but I also deal with a lot of private companies as well. I have a couple clients in the railroad industry, a couple clients in the foods industries. So it's really a variety. And I know my company itself works with agencies. We have MPCA sites, we have federal sites, we have private sites, we have clients that are really small companies. It's a big variety throughout.
Do you get to travel for your job?
Sometimes. I sometimes will do environmental audits where we go to sites and kind of look at what they're doing and what they could do better. And so that I got to travel a little bit, but we have an emergency response department that responds to like train derailments or big chemical spills, and they travel a lot. I kind of didn't want to do as much of that. I like to stay in Minnesota. I'm a little bit of a homebody in that way. So a little bit, but not too much.
I can go next. So like I said, I work for Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, and it's actually a completely distinct organization from the city of Minneapolis. So it has its own elected board, and it functions as an independent government agency. And if you've ever been to Minneapolis, you might have realized that there are 16 lakes, and they're almost entirely surrounded by public land, which is super cool that in like the 1880s, people were thinking about the value of having that park space around all of those lakes when it could have been developed for homes. And they kind of sacrificed the tax base that could come from having taxpayers living in mansions on these lakes to set aside the parkland, which is super cool. And I think that ethic of caring about the lakes and valuing the lakes is still really evident in the city and the way that budgets function in the city and the number of people that use those lakes. So yeah, we have 16 lakes, and then the Mississippi River, Minnehaha Creek, Shingle Creek, Bassett Creek. And basically my job is I oversee a team of field staff that are each specialists in some different form of water resources work. So one person on my team does lake monitoring and lake work. There's a stormwater person. We have kind of a person who does special projects, and then we usually hire 2 to 3 seasonal staff. So if you're looking for work this summer, probably late January-ish, I'm going to have job posting up looking for people to come work with me in Minneapolis. But basically, since I supervise a bunch of specialists, I get to be kind of a jack of all trades and learn a little bit about what each of them are doing. And my job is really to help them do their jobs and make sure that they have the resources they need, make sure they get connected with other professionals in the metro area who might be able to help them and answer questions if they're trying to figure out something new. And in previous jobs, I was a specialist, and particularly I worked with aquatic invasive species for much of the last 10 years. And I had this kind of point where I started thinking to myself, maybe I don't want to be an expert in one area. I kind of like dipping my toe into a lot of different things. Kind of like Emily was saying with her job, that's something that she likes. And I really like that as well. I like supervising people and mentoring people and helping people solve problems. And my job allows me to do that. And another thing I really like is I work in an environmental department of about 20 people in an organization that has 1,800 people. So as Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, it employs lifeguards at the beaches. It employs referees who are out reffing soccer games for kids. It employs people with urban and regional planning degrees. It employs engineers. And to be part of a huge organization that, in my eyes, is doing so much good for the community and trying to address racial equity issues and climate change resiliency issues. I really like that. And I'm proud about the work I do, that I can be part of a much greater organization that is doing so much good for the community. And I also like when I get off work on a Friday afternoon in the summer and I drive by the lake on my way home and I see hundreds or thousands of people out paddleboarding and walking their dog and sitting at the beach and making these great memories at the lakes. It makes me feel really proud that I get to preserve the lakes for people to enjoy them in that way. And I take my family to the lakes on the weekend in Minneapolis because I love them so much, and I'm so happy that they exist. In terms of negative, because so many people love those lakes a lot and love them in different ways, there's oftentimes conflicting viewpoints on how we should be managing those lakes. So one specific example is someone reached out to me who paddleboards around Lake Harriet every day. And she's on her stand-up paddleboard. And she said one time her paddleboard got tangled in the plants, the milfoil that was growing in the lake. And she flew off her paddleboard and said it was really traumatic. And she said, we need to get all the milfoil out of the lake because it's not safe for people to be paddleboarding in the lake. And literally within a few months after that, I got a phone call from an angler, a fisherman, who said, I saw there was a harvesting machine out there taking milfoil out of the lake. Don't you know that's fish habitat? And when you're taking that milfoil out of the lake, you're taking away the habitat from the fish. You need to stop harvesting the milfoil. So I'm literally hearing two exactly different things from different people. And it can be a hard thing because there's a lot of people with a lot of opinions, but it's an interesting challenge to communicate and educate and try to balance recreational access to these lakes and ecological integrity of these lakes. And yeah, still figuring out how to do that. Is that all? Yeah.
Awesome. I live in Minneapolis. I'm a lakes enthusiast of Minneapolis Lakes. So thank you, Mike, for everything that you do. And we just got a paddleboard this past summer that 4-year-old who is just cameoing loves. He calls it his Moana boat. So he just like parks himself right in the front and away we go. It's just a treat. So thank you, sir, for your work on the Minneapolis Lakes. They're glorious.
Thanks.
So I work with a private engineering firm called Houston Engineering. And Houston Engineering is a smaller engineering firm where we've got about 250 people total in the company. We're actually headquarters out of Fargo, but have an office in Maple Grove, which is where I work. And Houston has a really strong emphasis in water resources and water quality. So I work within the larger water resources umbrella, and then as part of the water quality group as part of that. And what I work within specifically under water quality is watershed planning. So this is actually a career that I didn't even know really existed when I graduated out of Morris. And the way that I found it, which I'll kind of get to a little bit more to my day-to-day by telling this story, is, I knew that water and water quality was always a passion of mine. I grew up in Duluth, so having Lake Superior there has always been a huge driving passion of mine. And, I wanted to work in a field where I could help protect or restore other people's version of Lake Superior. So whatever body of water they were passionate about, I wanted to do what I could in order to help keep that in good condition. So similar to what Mike was saying, when I was in my 2 years of private contracting, I didn't really know what it looked like to go back to grad school. So exactly as Mike was summarizing, I found a professor who worked primarily on working with local landowners in order to better understand what they want to do in order to better promote conservation action, in order to promote water quality. So I found that really inspiring because it really did bridge the gap that I wanted, which was I wanted to work in sciences, but I wanted to work with people. And I didn't know that that could really be together in the same camp. So to be able to find an advisor, graduate program that was willing to grab coffee with me, to just kind of talk shop about his research, who was willing to brainstorm with me about a research assistant, so that I could afford going back to my master's program and work under a research assistantship in order to kind of develop this new watershed planning process that the state of Minnesota is. So that kind of leads me a little bit more to my day-to-day, is that research assistantship was part of a larger developing the framework to transition the way that Minnesota has historically done local water management. So Minnesota used to do local water planning on county jurisdictional boundary lines. And as part of this new framework, that got transitioned to watershed-based boundaries. So all of a sudden, there are partnerships of local governments that are joining together in order to collaborate together, identify what specific resources are most important to them. So what lakes, rivers, and streams should be the focus of their efforts. Set some measurable goals for those, and identify essentially what they want to do in the next 10 years in order to make progress towards those goals, in order to protect or restore those resources that matter the most. So that's part of the One Watershed, One Plan program, which is administered by the Board of Water, which is run by the Board of Water and Soil Resources. So when I was in my research assistantship, I got to kind of develop that framework as far as what that was going to look like for some of the first 5 pilot watersheds that were doing this. One of those pilot watersheds, Houston Engineering, was the plan writer and facilitator for. So I got to know Houston Engineering during that research assistantship project. Was able to grab coffee with the project manager of that project. Got to know him, got to know Houston. So I had this magnificent baton pass between my last day as a research assistant and the following Monday, working in that pilot watershed, that Root River One Watershed, One Plan watershed, as a research assistant, and then that following Monday, working as a plan writer on that. So I have been doing watershed planning work with Houston Engineering ever since. So I've been working with Houston for about 8.5 years now. Still doing a lot of watershed planning as the main emphasis of my day-to-day work, and working with those partnerships with local government staff to figure out how to best use their time, their energy, their resources to protect and restore the surface water bodies. What I love the most about my job is I get to work with people. That's been a common reoccurring theme in all of my responses. I really wanted to be able to work with people, work with the scientists. I get to kind of take a bunch of data, crunch it, kind of scratch that nerdy part of my brain, spit that information out in a way that makes sense to the general public and to the partners that I'm working with, and help them problem solve about where to put their energy. What I really love working with Houston is I get to work with really, really smart, talented people that have way different areas of expertise than I do. And it's a really innovative workplace to work within because, you know, if you've got an idea about a problem to solve that your client is bringing to you, you've got the brains in the office to kind of figure out the best solution and dream something up that maybe didn't exist before. So I love working in a private firm for that ability to just really rapidly innovate and problem solve on the fly. And I also love what I do because of the variety of it and the pace of it. That fast-paced nature can sometimes be one of the hard parts about private consulting as well, is you want to meet the deadlines of your clients in order to leave a good impression. And sometimes that means it's really busy and can get intense. But that is also what really drives me in what I do as well. So, yeah.
Thank you guys. It's really cool also. I think, are we all Twin Cities people here? Are all three of you Twin Cities people? I grew up in the Twin Cities, so it's kind of cool to hear like all
Yeah.
these lakes that we're talking about. Like,
Right?
it's so cool to like this is my childhood. So yeah. Anyways,
No, that's awesome.
yeah, our final question before we have time for a Q&A is what would you tell your college self if you could go back in time? And what is something you want current UMN more students interested in sustainability careers to know?
Want me to start in?
Yep.
I would say the best thing you can do, and something I think I did some, but I wish I did more of, was just meeting people. So saying yes to networking events, they're always awkward, they're always uncomfortable, but everybody's feeling awkward. So networking events are really helpful just for getting your name out there. Hearing other people's stories about their roles, doing shadowing when you can is really helpful, or internships when you can is really helpful. I got to try out agencies, school districts, private company, or private larger company, and academia before I ultimately ended up doing what I do. So it's really nice to be able, or it was really nice to be able to kind of try out different things before finally landing where you are. So saying yes to networking events, saying yes to opportunities that come up, even if you don't think they're the perfect fit, I think is a really good way just to kind of test out the waters. Yeah, I think those are my main things.
I would say that science is great and science classes are great and knowing science information is great. But I've found getting out into the work world, writing skills matter a lot. Public speaking skills matter a lot. The ability to collaborate with people on projects matters a lot. So I think it can be easy as a science student to have blinders on and be like, I'm a scientist. I need to really focus on my science classes. College writing isn't that important. But I find that I use those skills much more in my day-to-day job than I do, my OChem lab information that I learned.
Here, here.
So what's that?
Oh, I said here, here.
Yeah, for sure. And I would recommend
important.
if you can fit it into your schedule, seek out some communication classes and things like that, because I think you're likely to use that when you get out in your career. And I think one thing I'd want you all to know is in Minnesota, there are a lot of people who want to work in the environmental field, which is a good thing because a lot of people care about the environment in Minnesota, but the jobs can be relatively competitive. And I think one of the best things you can do as an undergrad, like Rachel mentioned, is network, meet people, get some work experience, either in internships or in a research lab. Even if it's something like being a watercraft inspector or something that's kind of an entry level work experience in the environmental field, you have to start somewhere, and it's okay if it's not the exact direction that you want to go in the environmental field. But I think you find that once you get that first job in the field, it becomes a lot easier to get more and more once you have something on your resume. So that would be my recommendation. Find some work to do in the field, and I think you're going to enjoy it.
I guess my biggest advice would be if you're interested in like a specific job. So when I went into environmental engineering, I feel like I had an idea of what I would be doing, but not, it was totally different than what I do every day now. Like Michael said, there is a lot of writing, which I was not thinking I was going to be doing every day as an engineer. So I would really recommend finding someone in that job. Like Rachel said, she had coffee with a bunch of different people. That's great. Like meet people. A lot of people are willing to email with you, answer questions, or get coffee or do a Zoom call just to explain what their day-to-day job is like and what you could expect, or to even shadow someone. My company does summer internships. They're unpaid, but it's still good experience. There's also probably paid ones out at other places. So look for those kind of things where you can actually go into a job for at least a day or a week or some time to really know what you're getting into. And also, your first job doesn't have to be your forever job. Like, if you get your foot in the door somewhere that maybe isn't your perfect fit, but you get some experience, then you can start looking for other places. There's lots of people that I work with that have jumped around until they found a place that really, really called to them and really made sense. Yeah. So don't be afraid of, taking certain jobs just because they don't sound perfect. They may surprise you or they may not, and then you can always find another one.
And I think you can go a lot of directions in the environmental field, and it takes time to figure out which direction you want to go, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for your words of wisdom. I really appreciate you all making the time to be here today. We do have a little bit of time if anyone wants to ask any questions for our presenters or panelists. You can either just shout it out, put it in the chat, whatever you want to do. Any questions anyone has? Yes. So what were some of your hardest classes and what were some of your struggles?
Yeah, you go, Emily.
Well, like I said, I was a physics major. So, you get to quantum mechanics and it's not easy. That was a little difficult for me. I would say one of the classes I struggled with was college English class. I'm a math person. Writing is not intuitive to me. So that was a struggle. But like Mike said, it is really important. So I'm really glad that I did take that class and put effort into it to get a good grade and learn those skills, because I use them every single day at my job. You would be surprised. You can tell when someone doesn't have those skills in even short emails pretty quickly. So it's important to have that.
Yeah, my hardest class was easily OChem. That was a total struggle bus for me. Yeah, so that would be my answer. What was the other question there, Tori? Sorry.
Just some of your struggles in college.
Yeah, OChem is still the answer to that question. OChem and OChem.
Ditto.
I just finished OChem, so I feel that.
Oh, bravo. Welcome to the other side.
Thank you. Thank you.
I struggled with OChem too. And when I went to graduate school, my first semester in graduate school, I had to take a class called chemical limnology, which was basically like analytical chemistry for lakes and streams and stuff like that. And in my class were a bunch of chemistry majors or people that had done similar things as an undergrad. And I was like, oh, I'm in way over my head. But it ended up being a great class. I still use a lot of the info I learned. And when I first went to graduate school, I was intimidated by the fact that some of my peers had gone to like the U in the Twin Cities or had gone to big schools where they had taken these super specific classes as an undergrad, like, what, you've already taken fisheries ecology or whatever? And I was intimidated by that. But interestingly, I found that as it was going on, I started hearing that these kids who went to the big schools tended to only have taken standardized tests all the way through college, and they very rarely wrote papers for their science classes. They very rarely gave presentations for their science classes or did group projects. And having to do that more in grad school, I think that was the part where they felt really stretched and having to learn and do new things, where having gone to Morris, where we did a lot of that in our science classes, it felt a lot more comfortable to me. And I was able to learn the technical sciencey stuff that I didn't necessarily know coming out of Morris fairly easily, I would say. Did you two others experience that kind of thing in grad school?
A little bit. I was going to add on to that what I realized is a lot of people didn't know how to have relationships with their professors very well because they had such big classes. They didn't know them very personally. They didn't have those like references, those relationships. And at Morris, you're in small classes. I think the biggest class is like 70 people maybe. And you really get to know your professors. They know if you're there or not. They care if you're there or not. They maintain relationships with you. So that was something going into grad school. It was really easy for me to then make relationships with my graduate professors because I already knew, like go to office hours, do these things, like make sure you ask questions, talk to them and build those relationships while other people were not as comfortable doing that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree completely with that, Emily. I think Morris, because it's smaller, you feel more, at least what I felt was more comfortable to utilize the resources that were there for me in a way that it felt more restrictive in a big school setting because I went to the Twin Cities campus for my master's. So, it was a shift for me to go to the Twin Cities. I liked the smaller school of Morris much better, even as somebody who lives in Minneapolis. But I also was primarily on the St. Paul campus. So that's my hot tip. If you go to your master's program in the Twin Cities, the St. Paul campus is the Morris of the Twin Cities campus system. So I felt much more at home on the St. Paul campus.
You all would be happy to know that I live in Eden Prairie. My wife and I both went to Morris, and we literally have a U of M Morris flag on the front of our house. So
yes.
So we have a few minutes left. We have time for like one more question if anyone has anything. Yes, Brianna.
Hi, I guess I had a question specifically for Rachel. I was curious, so you talked about doing like AmeriCorps positions and then going back to grad school. I was wondering if you could talk more about like what the most helpful skills from like those positions were, and then also what you found like most challenging taking like time off of school and going back, or if there was like advantages or disadvantages, do you think of doing that?
Oh, those are great questions. What I learned most during the AmeriCorps program, I would say, is just kind of creating as you go. I would say, especially for my first AmeriCorps program, it's just kind of gaining some comfort in working within a system that wasn't completely established for me. So as part of my AmeriCorps, I was developing a new kind of part of a school district and a community education center that had more of an environmentally focused program with it. I was kind of creating that new program. And even though I didn't know exactly what that program was going to look like and didn't have the comfort of necessarily being able to use a perfect example of that, just kind of the comfort of, or just kind of the experience to lean into that a little bit, kind of use your mentors and your resources to as sounding boards as the best as you can as you go, but just kind of learn how to grow something from the ground up. I would say also, just getting to know the different, thank you, getting to know different people, what they did, what drew me to their roles, so that I could better understand what direction I wanted to go to ultimately in the workforce. As far as being in the workforce and then going back to grad school, I don't know another way, so I can't necessarily say if I think it was, the best way to do it or not the best way to do it. It was challenging to kind of shift gears a little bit from the comfort of working to going back to a grad school schedule where, you don't get to kind of be done at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. And, you're working on papers, and you're working on homeworks, and you're taking the GRE. And So all that, took a little bit of a gear change for me, but I was glad to have that experience under my belt. It made me more eager to be a student again because I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I was excited about being on a course that got me to a field that I knew I wanted to work in. So I needed the time. I needed that time in between to figure out exactly what it is that really lit me up. So hopefully does that answer your question at all, Brianna?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are about out of time, so I just want to one more time say thank you. It means a lot to me personally to have you guys come and speak to us about your journeys. And I know many of our other students here feel the same. So we really, really do appreciate it. And then also for the students, this panel tonight is part of a series of panels. So we had one in October. We're planning to do more in the spring. And then we also have videos from panels done by previous interns. So those are all on our YouTube channel, the Morris YouTube channel. So if you enjoyed today, if you want to learn more about different kind of career paths within sustainability, definitely check that out. You can either look on the Morris YouTube, or if you want to email me, I can put my email in the chat. Also, if you type tour, I'm the only tour at Morris, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I'm glad you all made the time to join us today. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for organizing.
Nice to meet
Nice
you.
to
And
meet you all.
feel free to send my contact info out to anyone who has questions and wants to follow up. Happy to talk.
Awesome.
Same
Yeah.
here.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Thank you all.